Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Moving along today.
That's great, man. Yeah, today's been super productive for me, so I'm pretty happy about it. But I think that we're really going to love today's guest. I'm sure. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. She can definitely crush it. I'll let you tell more about her because she's such a great lady in the arena of co-working space. I can't say enough about her. So.
Yeah. And for those of you guys who don't know what we're referencing, her name's Tanya Hahn. I actually met Tanya, I want to say 2 years ago or so. I actually did one of my book launches at her co-working space, Yes Working. Awesome person. She's not only the CEO of Yes Working, but she also runs a marketing company in town that works a lot with small business owners in order to build their marketing presence in the market. But in today's podcast episode, we focus primarily on the co-working industry. One industry that I think is poised for a very expansionary type of growth over the next decade or so. I think with more and more offices, especially long-term office leases, shortening in time frame, people aren't going to be going into a 10-year lease or 5-year leases as common. I think the co-working industry is poised for a very good rebound, and that's really what we dove into today. And really what we focused on was how did they adapt during the COVID-19 pandemic? Obviously, for those of you guys who were listening to this after the pandemic has already been completed, we did record this during the pandemic. So she had to learn how to adapt and survive through a once-in-a-lifetime type situation that impacted the co-working industry more so than in other industries. We also dove into some of the concepts about what to look out for, in particular if you're looking to start your own co-working space. She obviously had some lessons that she had learned through her experiences that she wanted to impart to people who were looking to do the same. And then we just kind of talked a little bit about various different things related to how she was able to identify the deal that she ultimately purchased and turn into a co-working space. And actually part of the co-working space in the back in particular, she converted to an Airbnb and then to a long-term rental. And that's part of the reason she was able to survive during the COVID-19 pandemic. But overall, I think it was a very, very enlightening discussion. Obviously, Tanya is one of my favorite people. So we really did have a great discussion, and I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about the podcast episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the podcast. All right. Hey, Tanya, it's great seeing you as always. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome, Tanya.
Thanks for having me.
And so Tanya and I actually go a ways back, and we've known each other for quite some time. And I actually did my book launch at our co-working space. So I think that this podcast is really going to be quite informative. But just to start out, what we usually do is we like to learn a little bit more about the people that we're interviewing. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe got your background, and I guess we'll kind of go from there.
So I started out as graphic design, interior design, and I got thrown into Bosch Tool Corporation, hired my company to do packaging design for them, and I got thrown into marketing. So from there, I realized why I was designing for an audience, and then I went into marketing. So I have a marketing and business development company and a serial entrepreneur. I have real estate, co-working space, and then I do my own marketing and development.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'll vouch for that as well, because again, like I said, I've been to a co-working space on several occasions. I've actually done my book launch at her event, and she helped me with all the marketing and everything for the event. So she does some pretty awesome work on that front as well. So that's awesome.
So what did get you interested in the co-working industry? Like from how'd you make that leap? And
our business, I had a business with a partner, and we were in a co-working space, and just the internet kept going down. We were servicing some of the other people in there, like helping them get to where they needed to go, all of that kind of stuff. And finally, I just kind of looked at him and said, you know what, I'm done. Let's just go get our own space. Let's just go get an office ourselves because I just can't deal with this anymore. And we found some commercial property, which we thought was going to be one building. It ended up being 3 buildings. And he decided, he was like, yeah, I want it. And I was like, what are we going to do with all of this? And he's like, you'll open up a co-working space. And I'm like, done. So that's how that happened.
So it was like an accident. It was kind of like an accidental type of thing. It just necessitated the space, right?
Yes, it was accidental. But I think back in the pre-planning of my mind, when we'd go to meetings together, I'm like, dude, let's just get our own space. I'm so done with this place. And he's like, yeah. And then we looked at property, and we thought we were looking at one building, and then they showed us the rest. And I just said, okay, well, let's go look somewhere else. And he was like, nope, we're buying it. I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah. And if for those of you guys who don't know, her building's located in a prime area of Louisville. You know, it's a very attractive area where a lot of people like to locate because of the restaurants and walkability, et cetera. So I think one of the things that would be kind of intriguing or interesting about that you could share with us is how did you, I guess, come across that deal, number one, and then kind of structure it so that, you know, you were able to utilize it for whatever uses you guys wanted to?
So we went out looking everywhere in Louisville, and honestly, we did not have an agent. We just went out looking, and the places we called with signs on the building that said for sale, we would call them. They were, oh, it's not for sale. And we would be like, we were looking at the sign. They're like, yeah, it's not for sale. Like, okay. So we went and got an agent that was one of his really good friends. And she's like, hey, there's a building in the Highlands on Bardstown Road. And he said, no, not interested. And I was like, man, come on. And so we went to eat at Taco Luchador on Baxter Avenue. And I said, hey, that's the building across the street. Let's go look. And so we went and called the agent. She showed up, and I was like, oh my God, this building's great. She goes, no, it's the building next door, and it's a carriage house behind. I just was like, okay, we have to go. And he goes, well, why? And I said, I don't have the money for that. I said, you hiding some money? And he's like, yep. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's how that happened. He was like, yeah, we're going to buy it. And it was priced right for the area, but I negotiated them down quite a bit, and we were able to get it for $700,000 less than what they were asking. It was a tough time. It was a tough time. It was 2018, middle of 2018, and I had done my homework. I've been in real estate investing groups for 25 years, and I thought I was going to start flipping property in 2018. Well, I bought commercial. So that's how that happened.
Well, and that's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people probably wouldn't have done the legwork on the front end to be able to get an understanding of what the real quote unquote value was. And again, it's not necessarily even what the value of the real estate was, but understand the motives of the person on the other side of the table. Because again, the value of the property may be higher, but if the motivation of the seller is different, that obviously can factor into what ultimately the purchase price is of that property. So I think that's a great lesson to learn.
And well, I found the person that was selling through digging. I found out that they had purchased a massive piece of commercial real estate, and they needed cash. Oh. So that's, I was at the right place at the right time. So, could that happen again? I'm sure it could, but I just at the right place at the right time.
But again, you capitalize on the experience by doing the research, because I guarantee you most people wouldn't have done the research. They would have been like, oh yeah, that seems reasonably priced at what they were asking for, and they probably would have just gone along with, maybe offering maybe a little bit less than what the purchase price was. But again, understanding the person's motivation, understanding that, you could have capitalized on that opportunity, you did. And so I definitely don't want you to undermine what you did, because I think that was awesome. Really.
Well, and my business partner did want to pay a little bit under what they were asking. I was like, nope, we're going to negotiate. And I said, how about you let me do the negotiation? He was like, okay, that's cool.
And that's Baxter and Bardstown Road. Is that what you're?
Yeah, we're directly across from O'Shea's on Baxter Avenue, right where Bardstown Road turns into Baxter.
Oh, okay.
So we're kind of right there.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, for all the listeners and viewers here, that is a very prime location for Louisville here in Kentucky. So kudos to you that you guys made that deal happen 2018, because for me, looking in the commercial space back then, and to find those deals, it was pretty tough in 2018 for myself. So that's amazing.
I'm proud that I did do the legwork before.
Oh yeah.
I know what to do when I'm looking at other stuff. Like I'm looking at some smaller stuff, which I'm finding, gosh, smaller stuff is just as much work.
Oh yeah.
As bigger stuff. So
yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the commercial industry, right? It's when it comes to doing the legwork. So you can't know enough about it before you try to make the deal. So
yeah.
So when you were in these stages in your experience of like starting up the space, what was some of the struggles that you experienced?
Basically, pricing, membership pricing. It was all over the map. I toured everything in Louisville. I had been at one in Louisville. I had toured a couple in Cincinnati. And it just was really the pricing I found was like based on location. And, we were priced pretty much along with one of the major players here. And we just couldn't get very many members. And so when I came down in pricing, but I offered different amenities, that's actually kind of what did it for us. It's odd, but I come from a very large family and I really like to cook. And so I would do once a month, Tuesdays lunch. Everybody showed up once they found out I was cooking. And it would just be a spread. I don't know how to cook small. So it'd be like Taco Tuesday, or it'd be, I'd do meatloaf once a month with mashed potatoes, or, whatever it was. And people like here just kind of dug it. So then, COVID came and it was like, hey, can't feed anybody anymore. Yeah. So, but I mean, I have snacks and I have a bunch of amenities and stuff like that. But really, it's kind of lower pricing. And I'm always around. I have an office here. So I've made friends with a lot of businesses, and I just started work for a company that moved out a year ago, and they called me for some marketing, which I'm grateful, but I was kind of surprised.
Yeah. You sound like you have some opportunity costs coming out of it. So,
and other people did too. Other people that worked through different businesses, that's kind of what happened. But, and I also do something a little bit different. I found that marketing was a little bit tough. I opened meetups to my space. If you have a meetup group and you call me and contact me, your meetup is free. You can come here and have a meetup.
Oh, nice.
I just thought that was a great way to offer community and also let people see the space.
Absolutely.
That was a big struggle getting people here.
No, I can imagine. And again, it's somewhat inconspicuous. It's not like something that you can just, people just like walk up and say, hey, I'm going to walk into this co-working space. I mean, it doesn't look like, a generic, not generic, but you understand what I'm saying? Like a co-working space that you would just normally see and just will walk into, like a WeWork or something like that. So if you were just walking down the street, you wouldn't necessarily know that in fact is a co-working space. So the idea that you're doing that is actually a pretty smart marketing idea. To be able to kind of get people in the space. And I'll also say this, when you did start, the co-working space, understanding what the market would be willing to bear for pricing is something that I'm sure was smart on your part to realize, hey, let me lower this price. And you started getting more traction on that front. I'm sure that helped a ton. And then obviously community building, which is also huge on that front as well. You're always around. People feel like they can talk to you about things that are if there's any issues. And then again, you bring people together, they start meeting each other, feeling that sense of a community, and then they want to stick around for a longer period of time. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And a big struggle we had was 2020. I mean, everybody left.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I was so fortunate that a company in 2019 was having their building worked on downtown, and they needed space. And they were like, we don't want to sign a contract. We don't want, to lease anything for a year. We want to go month to month. And they wanted a whole floor. And I was like, well, my second building right next door has hallways to the first floor and hallways to the second floor. And I said, if you don't want to sign a lease in our property, how about I make you a member I'll open the door. You can cross over, use the kitchen, use the conference rooms, use the printers, all that other stuff, use the TVs for conferencing, and I'll just make you a member. It's going to be a high price member, but I'll make you a member. Because I did that. That is what kept us afloat all of 2020. That rental only of the second floor, and that's the second building, the 2-story building, 963. So
that's smart.
Yeah, very smart.
And just being creative in the times. Because again, I'm confident that a lot of these long-term leases you see in office spaces are no longer going to be like 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, like you're usually seeing. People are going to want a lot more flexibility. So, and I know we'll get into the podcast. We'll kind of talk about the future of the co-working industry. And I think it's super bright for you guys. So, but I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and this is more related to the operational side, is how do you, I guess, structure your services in order to kind of maximize the profit of your operations?
2020 has been a hard hit on that. Again, I think our services, we do a flex space, which is bring your laptop, sit down, and we do part-time, full-time. Whereas part-time used to be $100 a month for 25 hours. And what we did for when 2020 hit was, and just pricing structure, we went to $80 a month, 25 hours a week, and 3 hours of conference room time. Normally part-time people don't get conference room time. And so full-time was I think it was like 200. We lowered that to 120 for full-time, which is 24/7. And then that's it, bring your laptop, sit down. And then you got more conference room time on top of that. Then we had dedicated desks, which is on our 3rd floor, where it's your desk, nobody can sit at it. And we lowered that substantially. That was about $350 a month. And I think it's $275 or $295 right now. I can't remember. And then we have locked offices, and our locked offices went from $800 a month to $500 a month. So that's how we made it profitable in 2020. Probably July of this year, I'm going to raise my prices. The membership is what drives it. And well, then I can't say that. We do events where people can rent events on nights, like Saturday nights. We do like showers, baby showers, that kind of stuff, where they can rent the first floor on a Saturday night or a Sunday. And that's been profitable for us. But I've found I'm the one running that show, and that's a lot of work. That's a lot of marketing, a lot of coordination. And again, we're very small. This is a 3-man company. So, it's very small. I mean, this year I'm probably hiring somebody to take that over for me because I do so many other things. So,
but speaking of the systems and stuff, you have the people, but is there any like software that you're using or anything like that?
Yeah, we use Wave for our accounting instead of QuickBooks. And we sign people up through our Wave system, and they automatically pay through there.
Oh, okay.
And then the one thing that I really like, I have a friend who he calls it a co-working space. It's just down the road, 31E. I did all their branding for them, but it's all locked offices. There is no common space. But he uses key fobs. And I was like, oh, no. I am not keeping up with key fobs. So we use an app called the August app. And it is an app that we put a lock on our front door, and we only want one point of entry so we know who comes and who goes. And people just sign into that app, and it just opens the door or closes the door. And I can give people availability based on their membership.
Okay.
And so I really like the August app a lot.
And so is that like a Bluetooth or is that Wi-Fi or something? Okay.
It's Bluetooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty neat setup that you have.
And do you have people, I guess, that you said you're a 3-man crew right now. Does anyone else have any co-working responsibilities at this moment in time, or is it more primarily just fall upon you?
I consider them on my team. Somebody cleans, and they have to go through and see if everything's there. But I mean, I give them other duties besides cleaning. And I think I told you this when you were here. I don't drink garbage coffee. And so I buy very expensive coffee, And I have coffee pots, I have French press, I have pour overs, I have all of that. So they have to make sure all of the coffee is stocked, and I want good stuff. I have tons of different kinds of sugar and all that. And all of the, I guess, snacks are stocked. And because for COVID, everything has to be individualized now in packets by itself, which is fine. But I make sure all of that is stocked. That's their duty, and then the grass cut, all of that kind of stuff, picking up garbage, that stuff. So they take care of all of that. And then I take care of all like the admin stuff, meet and greets, I guess the tours, and I'm handing off the tours to them as actually this week.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm sure as foot traffic starts coming back, I think that's going to probably be beneficial for you because it's going to probably take up a decent amount of time throughout the coming months. But so one of the questions I mean, is relevant to this particular point in time is that obviously COVID has affected the co-working industry more than most other industries, understandably so. So I guess, what are some of the ways that you've been able to adapt throughout 2020, now leading into 2021, as things start opening back up?
Well, and, I did have people that came during COVID and they asked, do you have COVID protocol? And I said, I do. So in every room, on the first floor, there's the first 2 rooms you enter, then there's like a common room with a kitchen, and there's a huge big back room. So in every room, I put up COVID standards. How many people can be in this room and how many are per table? And so I did that in every room. And then I had gel, sanitizers, face masks. I'm still on COVID protocol. So to enter my building, you must wear a mask. And I have like alcohol wipes in every single room. People were really surprised I was doing that. And I was shocked. And so I had some people that just said, oh my God, I got to get out of my house. I just need to be here for a month. I just need some flex space. So those little people that trickled in, they actually told other people, hey, I know there's somewhere you can go that's COVID safe. And so that just by me with that protocol, that has actually helped. And I still had people calling. They said, are you still under COVID protocol? And I said, I am. And so basically it's, if you're sitting at your table, you can take your mask off. If you get up, you have to put your mask on and you must wipe down anything you've touched. I have wipes everywhere. And like I said, I'm here. If I see that you didn't do it, I'll just go do it. And I remind them nicely, hey,
Yeah.
can you wipe that down?
Definitely. I mean, that's the only way, right? I mean, we have to protect each other and everything during this time and have to adapt. So kudos to you. That sounds great. And
I think you kind of mentioned earlier in the talk was related to adapting with, the office on the second floor. Again, It's like you look at the situation, you look at your P&L, you try to get a feel for what your expenses are, whatever else. And then I'm assuming that's part of the reason you were able to rent it at whatever the price was. The price you quoted was something that, was able to kind of float you throughout this time frame. And again, in any type of unprecedented event like this, which is a once in a lifetime type of situation, being able to be flexible and, coming up with something on the fly could, obviously has helped you guys through this pandemic. And again, I think going forward, it'll definitely pay dividends. So.
Well, and I mean that, I don't mind on our second floor in that other building that normally rents for $2,800 a month. And again, they were like, we just want someplace to go. We're only going to be here for a month. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I lowered it significantly and just made it inclusive of everything. And, and they were like, oh, we really like this space. We don't think we're going back. I'm like, I'm going to need you to sign a lease. And they're like, no. And I said, okay, then I'm going to have you sign a 6-month membership. Yeah. And so they signed a 6-month membership and they just re-upped for a 6-month membership. But that's literally what floated us, because again, out on our property, there are 3 pieces of property, and the property out back is a carriage house. And so we were Airbnb-ing that. So again, COVID came and it was like nobody was traveling. So I had to turn it into long-term rental, and I would get a whole lot less for long-term rental, but it's still, I had to have money coming in. So that was an S show. That was awful. Mm-hmm. And I finally just rented it to somebody 2 months ago on a long-term lease until December of this year, but they happen to be a remodeler. So I cut them a little bit of a break. Now they do maintenance on all of my buildings. That was written into the lease.
Nice.
That's smart. And then again, at that December timeframe, you can revisit it. And I'm assuming at that point, again, Airbnbs are already starting to get booked up. So I feel like, by December, if you decide you want to go back to the Airbnb route, I'm assuming that he's probably going to remodel some of the components of the building. I mean, that could be a good situation for you guys to be in, and then take 2022 as an opportunity for you to really expand your Airbnb presence. So that's awesome.
And that's one of the amenities we had too. We also said in our co-work space, when we had Airbnb going, if you come in from out of town and you want to work in a co-work space, but you need a place to stay, you can book that all at one time. You can stay in our Airbnb and walk 30 steps and be in the co-working space.
Nice. Since we're in COVID and everything, how do you foresee the progression of the co-working industry, and what is some changes and innovations that you're going to carry on to the next few years, I would say?
It really helped when we had that on our Airbnb, that we are attached to a co-working space. That was honestly, I thought about it and I was like, hey, that would be a good thing to have. But that was a stroke of luck in just marketing. And so we're planning on doing that in January of 2022, because that really helped us moving forward. But not every co-working space has that luxury. So that was one of the things I definitely will implement. We're doing more community stuff. I'm going to start opening up to more community items. Like, there are so many groups that are going to start meeting up in person with like 10 people or under. I'm just going to open my space to more of those people, because what ends up happening is they book events. And Raphael is right. Co-working is I think is really going to grow massively, because I get calls all the time that say, hey, my building's not reopening and they're just going to let me stay at home. And I cannot work at home. I can't be here 24/7. I can't get anything done. So I already have like 4 other people who just signed up last week because of that alone.
Yeah. I mean, working from home alone, for me, for example, I mean, I do a lot better when I have an office offsite, because your focus is there, right? You're not at home. And I mean, business owners that I've talked with, just for them alone getting an office, they're like, my productivity went up 10 times. So it's I can definitely see the growth from here on out for sure. I mean, downtown Louisville, I mean, there's a lot of buildings that are hurting and may not even get back to full capacity. I mean, there's quite a few businesses. So,
and I'll even echo that as well. I mean, and I think even more so on the suburbs of major cities, because again, you see a lot of these larger corporations rethinking their large central business district office presence. I know JP Morgan, they're putting up 2 massive buildings in New York City, and they're no longer going to have like a distinct office presence in those 2 buildings. And I think that's going to be a trend you see across the nation. And one of the benefits of what you referenced is that, you think of all these satellite types of offices where, most of these people that are going to be going to these co-working spaces live in the suburbs. So they may want somewhere close to home that they can go to and they can work. And again, you can't underestimate the value of community. A big part of the reason why people like being in an office environment is because obviously they can focus on their work when they need to, but they also have the ability to connect with coworkers and, build those relationships with people, because we are social creatures. I mean, it's inevitable. People are going to want to get out there. People are going to want to be in a setting where they can interact with others. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think the co-working space in the co-working industry is going to do like a hockey stick growth. And again, it's already gone through a major transformation, even from its inception early in the 2000s. I mean, it's grown rapidly, but I think it's going to be accelerated in the future. So
absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess this is more so related to someone who's just starting out. So if you were able to start all over again, and I know that sounds exciting, right?
Yeah.
Going through the whole experience all over again. But if you could start all over again, knowing what you know now, like what advice would you give to yourself?
I would look for high traffic areas, areas where it's walkability, food, restaurants, bars, Fun stuff. Again, well, I mean, I did know the Highlands was a place to be. But just somewhere where people want to be. You notice a lot of people there that are walking. That would be my number one thing. The other thing that I would, it's kind of hard, and I guess, I dealt with it before at the co-work space I was at, look for parking, because a lot of, I would say mostly younger, I've had a lot more younger people say, is there parking? I live in the Highlands where this co-work space is at. So I'm used to, there is no parking. But I've lived in bigger cities, Chicago, Philadelphia. So you just know there's no parking and deal with it. But the co-work space I was at before, there was no parking. It was street parking. And I was used to it, so I didn't care. But people care about that. So again, fortunately for me, COVID came along and the street opened up. They closed down all of that no parking from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It got rid of it. So now I have free parking out front of my building, which is awesome. So restaurants, parking, great amenities. Like the amenities we have that I noticed that I had trouble with. It may be cool, it may be awesome, but the projectors, where you set up a projector and you can have a conference on the projector. At the other space I was at, the projectors, just half the time you couldn't find the cords, the cables weren't there. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. And so we bought massive TVs and put them on rollers so you could roll them from room to room and you could just cast your computer to the TV. Nice. And that may not sound like highly innovative, but for me, I kept having trouble with the other space. I was like, nope, I'm not doing projectors. I refuse. And so we just found an alternative. And our TVs roll in every single room and we have them on every single floor. But they're giant, they're massive. So I would say look into that. What works for you, like other people may find that the projector's awesome. I really found that it is goofy as it sounds, providing a meal once a month for your coworkers when you can. So we did marketing too, where we traded a business. We did some of their social for them. And they provided like Taco Tuesday for us once a month. So, I mean, it all depends on how many members you have, but restaurants, walkability, parking, and provide good amenities. And that's what I would say. I would say those are the biggest things. The number one thing, location, location, location.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I really like the fact that you engage with other business owners to be able to kind of, offset some of the expenses of providing some of these amenities. Because again, like you said, I mean, having the once a month even meal, I mean, that in and of itself adds a significant amount of value for people. And if you're charged, $120 to $150 for the membership and you get a free meal a month and you get to use this awesome space with a bunch of amenities, I mean, that's essentially like you getting a gym membership or something like that, right? It's equivalent of the charge, yet you get a lot of utility out of it. So having that value proposition be very compelling is obviously awesome advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to ask this question to all of our people that come on the show and stuff. The most impactful book that you've read, and it can be any point in your life that maybe has encouraged you to become an entrepreneur, or and it could be anything. I'm just curious what for you.
There are a couple, and now I'm drawing a blank, but really, really old book. Gosh, I can't. I'm so bad. But the other one was a 4-Hour Work Week. That really kind of set me on my ear. And Crush It, not Crushing It, Crush It, the first one by Gary Vee. I'm going to be bad here, but I thought the second one was just a rehash. But Crush It, I thought was great. Linchpin by Seth Godin, I thought was really good. I read a lot, and I reread things over the years. So, old stuff. As a Man Thinketh. Really, I read a lot, but I just reread stuff. So
But that's great, because you definitely hear a lot of people that are like, oh, I read like a book a week or whatever, but I can't imagine that you can implement everything that, if you read a book a week, I mean, the likelihood of you being able to implement that into your life is almost nothing. So in my opinion, it's better to read one book 10 times than it is to read 10 books one time, because you don't retain all that information and you don't really retain all those ideas. Obviously, you can pick out tidbits that may be valuable to you, but once you find one of those books that's like so compelling to you, reread it. I've reread certain books 5 or 6, 7 times, because I understand the value that they have, and it takes time to be able to process that and then, be able to, implement that into your life. So that's awesome. And I'll even say that the 4-Hour Work Week is phenomenal. I also really like the Millionaire Fastlane. I don't know if you ever read that book.
I have not read that yet, but there's one, I have a goofy habit. I love little libraries. And so I will go drive through a neighborhood I've never driven through to see if there's a little library. I get out and I try to find a business book. There's rarely is there a business book, but I found Phil Knight, the Nike story, his book, his memoir.
Shoe Dog, phenomenal.
Shoe Dog. Oh my God. I had no idea. He robbed Peter to pay Paul like constantly. And I never knew he was as down to earth as he was. And that book like told me, I was like, hey, I must be all right.
And he was like a shoe distributor for a Japanese company. It wasn't even like he came up with the idea himself. Really, he started selling those track shoes that were the Fukuyamas. I can't remember what they were called, but he became the distributor, and then they kind of like locked him out of the situation. So he had to like scramble to figure out what he was gonna do.
And well, he did do that waffle. I guess the bottom layer of the shoe, he designed that
with his coach. Yeah,
was phenomenal. But I mean, just the turmoil he went through. You have no idea. And so when people say to me, hey, I want to be a millionaire in a year, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Because you read his book and it was like, he wasn't really like financially sound until like year 18. Or I was just like, what?
Well, he went back to teaching. I think he was teaching at like Portland State or something like for a while. Like, I mean, it was, he was phenomenal. I mean, and that's why I really like reading a lot of these biographies, because you get a glimpse into what their life was when they first began. And obviously some entrepreneurs came from an entrepreneurial family or background, and not to steal anything from that, but again, you had a little bit of at least an understanding of what it took. But in certain situations, like, Phil Knight and I mean, various Sam Walton, like all these people who were just started from nothing, and then they just kind of figured it out as they went. But they just had this obsession with what they were doing, such that they were able to turn the corner at a certain point. And that's what you see. You don't see the 20 years of turmoil and stuff they had to deal with, but you see the 20. Was it the overnight millionaire in 20 years?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, which there needs to be, that's for sure.
Yeah. So. Well, Think and Grow Rich. That one I've been reading since 1996, and I constantly reread it. Mm-hmm. So, and I get something different every single time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's one of those books that you read in sections. And I think one of our previous guests, Todd DeWalt, mentioned that book, and it's the same thing. He said, you just read a chapter, you kind of contemplate that and think about it for a bit, and then go to the next one and whatever else. So that's awesome. So one of the things we like to ask our guests at the end of the podcast is if they contribute something to the CRE Treasure Chest. Now, what the CRE Treasure Chest is it's a repository of resources that we have on our website that we provide to all of our listeners. And it's 100% free. It just gives them the ability to be able to learn a little bit more about the commercial real estate industry. So I guess, what do you have to offer to the treasure chest today?
When you say resources, I thought about this after we had talked about it a while ago. Of course, I have my co-work space, and for anybody listening or anybody who's affiliated with you guys, all they have to do is mention the podcast and they'll get half off on a month membership, whatever membership they want. It doesn't matter. And or locked office. And then I have throughout the years collected resources of different things. So are you looking for something somebody can learn? Are you looking for classes, PDFs of information?
Yeah, PDFs help a lot. Like a lot of the people that have contributed in the past have just given like I think one of our previous guests, I'll just mention Todd just because he was one of our more recent guests. He provided like a template for, structuring how do you approach a particular situation in the construction business. So it was just more so his knowledge. He condensed some of his knowledge and provided it to the group as a free resource. But obviously the co-working discount is awesome. I think that's phenomenal. You guys should definitely take advantage of it because it's an awesome space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can just put a link, I guess, to our website, our co-working website. And when somebody requests a tour, it's usually an email, or they can email us. I can see if they've mentioned the podcast or whatever, we can do that. But I'll put together like a little PDF of like, if you're thinking about starting a co-work space, what I talked about here. But when people listen to stuff, they might forget. So I'll put together like just a PDF of things to look for if you're starting a co-work space, things you want to pay attention to. And I can send that to you.
That'd be awesome. No, I know. And again, like we were saying during this podcast, I really do believe in the co-working industry long term. So I think that resource would be helpful to a lot of people. So thanks for that.
We definitely appreciate it. And for people that want to get in contact with you for your co-working space and or just want to get in contact with you, where should we direct them?
Well, I have for my marketing, I have a very interesting email address, and that's my @ symbol. It's called Talk to the Hahn. My last name is Hahn, H-A-N. Instead of Talk to the Hahn, I made it's TALK, the number 2, and then my last name, which is Hahn, H-A-H-N, at Gmail. And that's all my @ symbols at Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
That's awesome. And we'll be including all those
we'll include it
in the show notes as well, so you guys can have access to them if you're listening on a podcast or watching on YouTube. Again, this will be in the description below. But again, Tanya, I just really appreciate you coming by. Like I said, we've obviously known each other for quite some time now, and obviously I know you provide a ton of great value. So I really do appreciate you stopping by the podcast.
Absolutely. We appreciate it.
And if you all ever want to host your podcast out of here, come on by. Let me know.
Oh, we will. Yeah. And we definitely need to grab coffee at some point soon to kind of catch up.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, for those of you guys who are listening, like I said, on the podcast or on YouTube, again, feel free to, if you're listening on the podcast, please give us a 5-star review. We really, really appreciate all the support. If you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate it. It helps the YouTube algorithm make sure that more and more people can hear this information. And we'll see you guys, I guess, next time.